website, www.harvard.edu, and then it apparently decided, wait a minute, let me not download all of these tens of kilobytes, and let me redirect the user to m.harvard.edu, which is what I accidentally manually typed in the first place. So this is not all that uncommon as to this redirection, and we'll come and look at, underneath the hood, how you can actually do even the simplest of things there. And I dare say there's so many sites out there that don't do this properly. If you read like Google News, and on your phone, just news.google.com, and click through a lot of these links, very often, I at least will be redirected to the mobile version of whatever news site has their article linked there, and then I don't even end up at the article I clicked on because someone decided just to redirect any mobile user by default to m.whatever.com. But realize that for Project Zero, you will have all of the power, and it takes one line of code to actually solve these problems correctly, to detect what the user is using and redirect them to the right place. Well, what else kind of qualifies as a mobile app? So there's Gmail. And Gmail is sort of a genuine, compelling mobile web application, and that makes heavy use of fairly complex JavaScript to really create a nice interactive experience for the user, even if you're not on a very fast connection. If you're on a 3G or Edge connection, even Gmail is pretty good at conveying the illusion that things are pretty zippy. So this is the website, gmail.com, in a phone. This is not the downloadable app that now exists. And so we'll talk over the course of the semester in the context of JavaScript how you can leverage techniques like AJAX and asynchronicity to create the experience of seamlessness and interactivity, while in the background, really, you have a lot of caching and a lot of latency happening that's addressing or causing those problems there. All right, so we could play all day with websites on the mobile web, but we'll just use those to set things up. So how do you make one? All right, so this is sort of HTML 101. There it is. This is HTML5. This is what everyone's talking about these days. Looks pretty similar to HTML4 and prior, but there are some fancier features, just a couple of which we'll scratch over the next couple of weeks. But over the course of the semester, will you be encouraged to delve into some of the fancier features, among them geolocation, figuring out where a user is, local storage, so that you can store actual kilobytes and not just a few bytes of information like you used to be able to only in cookies, and a whole range of other features as well. So let's do a really quick demo here. I'm going to go ahead and let's say open up something called the CS50 appliance. So just as those of you who are in CS51 this semester might be using, and we used this past fall in CS50, the CS50 appliance is a virtual machine, which means it's an operating system, specifically Fedora Linux, that we have pre-installed into a big file that you can download from via the course's website. You can then install using a program called a hypervisor, something called VMware Fusion, VMware Workstation, VMware Player, VirtualBox. A whole bunch of options exist such that when you download the appliance and that hypervisor, tie the two together and double-click an icon, voila, you are now running Linux on your own computer inside of a window. So former CS50 students from this past fall are familiar with this. Former CS50 students will be glad to hear this version's better, among whose features are nice full screen out of the box, such as I just did here, the ability to just move between the operating systems on your computer if you have a Mac, and a whole bunch of other fixes that we've rolled out. So the first project will walk you through the process of downloading this onto your own computer and using it for projects. Among the compelling upsides for us is going to be everyone then is not only using a standard uniform environment, so we know what to expect and can help troubleshoot issues, it's also designed to mimic real-world web servers. So you will actually have inside of the appliance your own web server running, your own database server running, your own installation of PHP or any other tool that you might want to use. So it's meant to be perfectly representative of what you would get if you were actually using a corporate server or paying some third-party host. Good question. Can you run Xcode in the CS50 appliance? No, because the CS50 appliance by nature is Linux. Xcode requires macOS. Some Googling suggests that some industrious folks have in fact solved that problem using VirtualBox or Fusion or other hypervisors by following detailed directions people have posted online over time. Okay, so I came very close there. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead into the following directory here. So for those unfamiliar, just assume I'm at a command line on my own computer or on nice.fas.harvard.edu or cloud.cs50.net. And I've in advance created this directory called vhosts, which stands for virtual hosts. More on that in the first project spec. But inside of this vhost directory, I've got a whole bunch of source code for today. So if I go in there to lecture 1, I now have an HTML directory. And inside of here, I have a few examples, prefabbed examples modules, all of which are on the course's website. In the future, because Harvard Hall doesn't have the best or any Wi-Fi, we'll try to post this stuff as early as possible over the weekend, and I'll do my best so that if you want, you can download it in advance and actually have it to play with during class. There are PDFs available online as well. So let me just go into a very simple example in the CS164 the HTML5 directory here. And let me go ahead and open up, let's say, HTML5.html. So I'm using gedit here, which is a cheap little text editor with which some of you are familiar. And here we go. Here is a very simple HTML5 web page with some standard Latin text. So let's just go ahead and pull this up. So this is in that HTML5 directory. What I'm going to do is open up Chrome inside of the appliance, though you can configure your Mac or PC to allow you to use your own browser client side. And I'm going to go to http://lecture1 enter. And I don't have permission to access / on this server. So this is just a web server misconfiguration detail. And this probably boils down to what little Linux command to fix this. So some kind of chmod error. So let's just do a quick sanity check. ls-whoops, that's a lot of files. Let's see. So my home directory is world executable. That's good because that's necessary. The vhost directory is world executable and readable as per the R's and X's over there. Let me go into vhosts here. OK, so this one's broken. So this needs to be like 711, if you recall your web development experience. Let's go into lecture 1 now. This seems to be messed up. So in one fell swoop, I'm just going to go ahead and chmod everything a little excessively. A plus RX means give everyone read and, if it supplies, executability permission. And this is just a quick and dirty way of exposing everything for the sake of class. But in a real server, we would lock some of this stuff down. So let me now go back to my browser and reload, and voila. So to be clear, and this is the mental model you should have throughout the semester, the appliance is, yes, a computer, but it's also a server running software, web server software, database software. So you're using, I'm using at the moment, a browser to connect to the appliance inside of the appliance, because it is both client and server, if you will. All right, so let's go into HTML5. Let's go to HTML5, and voila. So there is a very nice and simple and Latin-based website. But let's actually now pull this up in a mobile context. So for this, I could use my actual phone and pass it around, or we can just pull up a simulator here. So let me go ahead and close harvard.edu. Let me go back to the directory that I prepped in advance here. Let me go into lecture 1, HTML, HTML5, and finally, OK, useless, right? So horrible, horrible, horrible mobile website. So how do we fix this? And how do you start designing with these kinds of contexts in mind? Well, it's actually rendering quite like a desktop browser, right? It is zoomed out to be sort of normal browser dimensions. But normal browser dimensions isn't quite appropriate here. So it turns out with the mobile web, and these are just very easy new features of HTML, some of them specific to Apple in this case, that allow you to actually tell the browser upon downloading this HTML that, you know what, you need to actually behave a little bit differently from usual. So the viewport. The viewport refers to like the rectangular space over which you have all control in terms of the user's experience. And realize that there's going to be a few meta tags and attributes you can use in HTML5 in this mobile context to specify, among other things, things like width. And we can do this very simple. We can fix this very easily, in fact, by a very simple fix here. Let me go back to, let's say, gedit. Let me go ahead and open up devicewidth.html, which is literally copied and pasted from the previous demo, but I added one thing. So how do you make a website mobile friendly, mobile ready, and make it be readable? So you have a little meta tag. Viewport content width equals device width. This is a little messy, dare say, but device width is like a special global HTML-like variable that's just defined by the browser to be 320 pixels, 480 pixels, whatever is applicable to the device. So the end result should be, hopefully, a better experience. So I'm going to go back in my Chrome browser, pull up device width, and there's no material difference. In fact, the markup is otherwise the same except for that meta tag. But if I go back to my Mac or my phone in my pocket and pull up this time the file that is called devicewidth.html, now at least we're getting somewhere. Okay, so really just basic building blocks here that we'll very quickly start taking for granted, but it's these little things that make websites sort of optimized for mobile devices. How about a whirlwind tour of some other things that you can do with HTML so we can start taking these features for granted? So you have, and these are all prefixed with Apple's identifier. So you can specify in HTML markup that my mobile website, HTML, CSS, and whatnot, I want to be bookmarkable on a user's desktop in such a way that when they click that icon that says Save to Home Screen, when they then click that icon thereafter, they should not see the address bar. It should actually look and kind of feel like an actual mobile app. How do you do that? You literally copy and paste this into the top of your file, and it will allow a user to bookmark your page more cleanly. You can do simple, sexy little things. If you don't like the gray bar that's usually at the top of the phone that shows what your signal strength is and clock, you can make it black with something like this.